In the heart of Lagos, one of Africa's richest and busiest cities, there lived a woman of great elegance and power, Lady Adesewa, the widow of a legendary business tycoon. Together with her late husband, Chief Olawale, she had built a massive empire that stretched across oil, real estate, and banking. Their names opened doors, and their wealth commanded respect everywhere. But beyond the glittering fortune and the endless stream of admirers, Lady Adesewa had only one priceless treasure: her only son. Ayomide had been raised with discipline and care. From a young age, Lady Adesewa taught him humility, despite the wealth that cushioned his every step. When he was old enough, he was sent abroad to study in the world's finest schools. Years later, he returned as a polished, well-educated young man, ready to take over his father's throne as the new head of the family conglomerate. Yet Lady Adesewa's heart carried a silent burden. Who would her son marry? She had seen the kinds of women who hovered around rich young men like moths to a flame. Beautiful faces with hearts made of stone, lips full of sweet words, but eyes hungry for money and status. Lady Adesewa refused to watch her son fall into such a trap. So she hatched a plan. Instead of sitting in her mansion waiting for fate, she would disguise herself. She would descend from her golden throne and become invisible. She would walk into her son's company not as the wealthy widow of Chief Olawale, but as a poor old cleaner. In that hidden role, she would discover the true character of the women around her son. One misty Monday morning, Lady Adesewa transformed herself. She tied a faded wrapper tightly around her waist, wore a loose old blouse, and covered her hair with a plain scarf. On her feet were worn rubber slippers, and in her hands a mop and bucket. Gone was the diamond-studded matriarch. Before the mirror stood an ordinary cleaner, wrinkled with struggle. When she entered the company headquarters, the large glass door swung open, and the staff stared. For a brief moment, the buzzing office fell silent. Then came the laughter. Who allowed this woman from the village inside here? One of the senior secretaries, Ponia, sneered. Maybe she thought this was a market. Another lady, Priska, added, her voice dripping with mockery. Giggles rippled through the office. But Lady Adesewa, now Mama Bisi the cleaner, said nothing. She simply lowered her gaze and pushed her mop across the shiny marble floor. Her eyes, however, missed nothing. She noticed one young woman sitting quietly at her desk, ignoring the mockery. She was Kemi, a junior staff member with calm eyes and a soft demeanor. Unlike the others, Kemi did not laugh. She didn't look at the cleaner with pity either, just simple human respect. Lady Adesewa's heart stirred. Perhaps here was someone worth watching. The next day, the office was filled with the sound of heels clicking against polished floors and the heavy scent of designer perfumes. Mama Bisi bent low to clean a corner when Ponia's sharp voice cut through the air. Old woman, you missed a spot. Triska smirked, folding her arms. Or maybe she's too deaf to hear us. Lady Adesewa swallowed hard, forcing herself to remain calm. She bent again to continue mopping, but before she could rise, Tonya gave her a harsh shove. The bucket toppled, dirty water spreading across the lobby. Lady Adesewa's frail body lost balance and she crashed onto the cold tiled floor. Laughter exploded. She's too weak for this job, Priska said mockingly. Maybe she should go beg on the street instead. Lady Adesewa groaned, her palms gripping the wet floor as she tried to push herself up. Her scarf slipped, strands of green hair tumbling free. Not one person stepped forward. Not one, except Kemi. The young woman rushed to her side, kneeling quickly. "Ma, are you okay?" she whispered, her hands steady as she helped the disguised matriarch rise to her feet. Lady Adesewa's eyes locked with hers, and for a moment, time stood still. In those simple eyes, she saw no mockery, no calculation, only genuine kindness. Tonya scoffed. "Kemi, you're actually touching her? You'll catch something." Kemi ignored her, squeezing out the wet rag and handing it back. "Be careful, Mama," she whispered softly. Lady Adesewa swallowed the lump in her throat as she locked her eyes on her. Lady Adesewa decided to push further. She prepared a traditional Yoruba meal, eba with egusi soup, steaming hot, wrapped carefully in a food flask. At lunch hour, she sat alone in the staff break room, opening her container. The rich aroma of melon seeds, palm oil, and spices filled the air. Within minutes, Tonya and her clique entered, their noses wrinkled. "What's that smell?" Priska cringed dramatically. "It must be the cleaner's food," Tonya replied with a fake laugh. "So local. Who eats this in a company like ours?" They all laughed cruelly, their manicured fingers covering painted lips. Lady Adesewa pretended not to hear. She scooped a ball of eba and dipped it into the soup slowly. At that moment, Kemi walked in, carrying a simple lunchbox of jollof rice. She paused, taking in the scene. Without hesitation, she walked to Lady Adesewa's table. "Good afternoon, Mama," she greeted with a warm smile. "Good afternoon, my daughter," Lady Adesewa replied, her eyes softening. Kemi sat down, ignoring the giggles from the corner. She opened her lunchbox and leaned forward curiously. "Mama, did you cook this? It smells so nice." Lady Adesewa nodded. "Yes, my dear. Would you like to taste?" Before Kemi could answer, Tonya burst into laughter. "Kemi, don't disgrace yourself. You want to eat the cleaner's food? You'll probably get food poisoning." But Kemi simply smiled. She took the spoon, scooped a little, and placed it in her mouth. She chewed slowly, then nodded with delight. "This is delicious, Mama. It tastes like home." Lady Adesewa's heart melted. For the first time in weeks, tears burned in her eyes, not from pain, but from hope. Later that week, Lady Adesewa set the final test. She entered the restroom with her bucket and accidentally spilled water across the floor. Clutching her waist, she cried out in pain. Within seconds, Tonya and her group walked in. "Ah, the poor old woman fell again," Priska mocked with exaggerated sympathy. "Maybe she should retire," Tonya added coldly. "We're not cleaners. It's not our job to help." Lady Adesewa lay on the floor waiting. The laughter of the office women echoed across the tiled restroom as Lady Adesewa lay groaning on the wet floor, clutching her waist. Tonya folded her arms and smirked. "We are not cleaners," she said sharply, "so it's not our job to clean up her mess." Priska chuckled beside her. "Exactly. Maybe she should resign and go back to the village." Their voices blended into cruel amusement as the others shook their heads and laughed. But just then, the door opened. Kemi walked in, carrying a small notebook. She froze. Her eyes swept over the wet floor, the group of laughing women, and the old cleaner sprawled on the ground in pain. Silence swallowed the room for a heartbeat. Lady Adesewa's heart thudded. Would Kemi pretend not to see? Would she walk away to avoid humiliation? But she didn't. Without hesitation, Kemi dropped her notebook and rushed forward, kneeling beside the fallen woman. "Mama, are you all right?" Her voice trembled with concern. Lady Adesiwa groaned softly, pressing her hand to her waist. My daughter, my waist. I can't move. Gemi's eyes brimmed with worry. She turned to the others, her voice firm. Why are you just standing there? Can't you see she's in pain? Help me! Tonya scoffed, rolling her eyes. Help a cleaner? You must be joking. Gemi sneered. Gemi, don't disgrace yourself. She's not your mother. Gemi's face hardened. She turned back to Lady Adesewa. Don't worry, Mama. I'll take care of you. And then, to the shock of everyone, she pulled out a clean handkerchief from her bag and gently wiped the sweat from Lady Adesewa's forehead. After that, she rolled up her sleeves and began mopping the water off the floor herself. The room fell silent. The women stared in disbelief. Gemi, are you mad? Priska hissed. You're cleaning the floor for a cleaner? Have you lost your mind? Gemi ignored them. She worked quickly, wringing out the rag, drying the tiles, and ensuring no one would slip again. When she was done, she lifted Lady Adesewa gently to her feet. Come, Mama, she said softly. Let me take you to sit down. Lady Adesewa's heart swelled with emotion. For years, she had seen only greed and mockery in the eyes of people around wealth. But here, in this moment, she saw something rare. Pure humanity. The next morning, the office buzzed with its usual chatter. Phones rang, keyboards clattered, and perfume filled the air. As Gemi settled at her desk, she noticed the familiar figure of Namabisi, the old cleaner, walking toward her. Good morning, my daughter, Lady Adesewa said gently. Gemi smiled warmly. Good morning, Mama. How are you today? Lady Adesewa studied her face. No pretense, no hesitation, just warmth. She cleared her throat. Ahem. My daughter, she began slowly. I want to ask you for a small favor. A pause. Kemi blinked. Of course, Mama. What is it? The disguised matriarch hesitated, her voice low. I live alone. I cook, but eating alone is not good for the soul. Would you do me the honor of joining me for dinner one evening? Kemi's eyes widened. Mama, you want me to visit your house? Yes, just once, Lady Adesewa said softly. The break room had gone quiet. Tonya and Priska, who had been scrolling through their phones, were now staring with mocking smiles. Ah, Gemi! Priska laughed. So you want to eat clean-ass food in her one-room apartment? Tonya giggled. She probably lives in one small face-me-I-face-you building in Mushin. Lady Adesewa kept her gaze on Kemi, waiting. Kemi turned to them, her voice firm. So what if she's a cleaner? She's still a human being and she deserves respect. Then she turned back to Lady Adesewa, her smile returning. Mama, I would be honored to have dinner with you. Lady Adesewa's chest tightened with emotion. This girl is different. That evening, Kemi arrived at the address Mama Bisi had given her. She expected a crumbling building, maybe an old one-room apartment. But to her surprise, the compound was neat and the modest bungalow well kept. The walls were freshly painted, flowers bloomed in clay pots, and the air carried a strange dignity. Kemi frowned slightly. This doesn't look like the house of a poor cleaner. Who is this woman really? The door opened, and Lady Adesewa, still in her disguise, smiled warmly. Welcome, my daughter. Please, come in. Inside, the home was simple but filled with grace. The furniture was old but spotless, the curtains neat, and on the table was a steaming spread, jollof rice, fried plantain, and grilled fish. Kemi inhaled deeply. Mama, this smells wonderful. They ate together, laughing and sharing stories. Kemi spoke of her dreams, her struggles, her family. Not once did she ask about wealth. Not once did she show discomfort. To her, Mama Bisi was simply Mama. And as Lady Adesewa listened, Her decision became clearer than ever. The following morning, the air at Murtala Mohammed International Airport buzzed with excitement. Families reunited, luggage carts rolled, and taxi drivers called out for passengers. Among the sea of travelers, a tall young man in a navy blue suit emerged. Ayomide, the only son of Lady Adesewa, returning after more than a decade abroad. He had studied in Oxford, worked in New York, and traveled across continents, but now it was time to step into his father's shoes and take command of the empire. When he walked into the company headquarters, everything changed. Women who had once slouched in their seats now sat upright. Makeup was reapplied, skirts adjusted, and fake smiles blossomed. "He's so handsome," Prisca whispered, eyes glittering. "And rich," Tonya added with a smirk. "I must be the first to greet him." But Ayomide barely noticed them. His eyes swept the office, and to his surprise, he saw something unusual. An old cleaner bent over with a mop, working diligently. Something about the sight made him frown. He stepped closer. "Excuse me, Mama. Why are you cleaning the lobby floor? Where is the janitorial staff?" Before the cleaner could answer, Tonya rushed forward, her sweetest voice dripping like honey. "Oh, don't worry, sir. She's just a cleaner. She's used to this kind of work." Ayomide's frown deepened. Used to it? Does that mean she shouldn't be treated with respect? Tonya froze. Her smile faltered. At that moment, a voice ran clear across the office. "She deserves all the respect in the world." Ayomide turned. His eyes met Kemi's. And in that instant, something stirred in his chest. It wasn't just her beauty. It was the quiet confidence in her eyes, the kindness that radiated effortlessly. Who was she? That night, as Ayomide sat in his new office, his mind should have been on company reports and board meetings, but instead, his thoughts kept drifting back to Kemi. He picked up his intercom. "Rose, please send in Kemi from junior staff." Downstairs, Kemi froze. The new boss wanted to see her? Her heart thudded. Tonya and Prisca's eyes widened in jealousy. "I told you she's using charms," Tonya hissed. Ignoring them, Kemi walked nervously to Ayomide's office and knocked. "Come in," his deep voice called. She stepped inside. The room was grand. Polished wood, a breathtaking view of Lagos, and shelves lined with books. Behind the large desk sat Ayomide, watching her intently. "Good afternoon, sir," Kemi said, lowering her gaze. Ayomide leaned forward. "I hope I didn't make you uncomfortable earlier. I just don't like seeing people treated unfairly." Kemi blinked, then smiled softly. "Thank you, sir. That was kind of you." Ayomide hesitated, then asked, "That cleaner, the older woman, you seem close to her. Who is she?" Kemi's eyes brightened. "Mama Bifi? She's wonderful. She's like a mother to me." Something softened in Ayomide's gaze. That name, Mama Bisi, sparked a warmth inside him. Kemi didn't know the truth, not yet. But Ayomide could already see how much that woman had won her loyalty. "Tell me about her," he urged. And so Kemi did. Her voice carried an earnestness that filled the room. She spoke of kindness, of respect, of dignity. Values Mama Bisi had quietly taught her in small, everyday ways. Ayomide said nothing, only listened. But the longer Kemi spoke, the more he realized she was no ordinary woman. Without even knowing it, she was taking her first steps into his world. But outside the office, another kind of fire was already burning. The news that Kemi had been called to the boss's office spread like wildfire. By the time she returned to her desk, the whispers were in full swing. "I knew it," Anita muttered as she reapplied her lipstick in front of her compact mirror. "She's been pretending all this while, but she's smarter than she looks." "Or maybe just lucky," Linda chimed in, flipping her braids over her shoulder. Anita snorted. "Lucky? Please. In this world, no one just gets lucky. She's playing a game, and I'll make sure she doesn't win." Both of them turned toward Kemi, quite quietly settled back at her desk. Linda leaned closer, pretending casual interest. "So, what did the boss say to you?" Kemi barely looked up from her computer. "Nothing serious. He only asked about Mama PC." Anita's eyes went wide. "That cleaner again? What's wrong with you, Kemi? Instead of impressing him, you wasted your chance talking about that old woman." Kemi sighed, her patience thinning. "Mama BC is a good person. I respect her, and nothing you say will change that." Anita folded her arms with a nasty smack. "You'll regret it." But Kemi had already tuned them out. She had work to finish, and she wasn't about to waste her energy trading words with jealous colleagues. That evening, Mama BC sat in her modest home, a small bungalow at the edge of Surulere. A pot of steaming egusi soup simmered on the stove, the rich aroma filling the air. She stirred slowly, her mind heavy with thoughts. Kemi had promised to join her for dinner after work. True to her word, a soft knock came just as Mama BC was about to dish the food. "Come in, my daughter," Mama BC called, her voice warm. Kemi stepped inside, a tired but genuine smile lighting her face. "Ah, Mama, something smells heavenly," she said, inhaling deeply. Mama BC chuckled and motioned to the table. Sit. Today, we shall eat properly." As Kemi settled down, Mama BC studied her closely. She had watched how the other girls at the office treated Kemi, mocking her, whispering behind her back, poisoning the air with jealousy. And Mama BC knew something darker was coming, something that would test Kemi's strength in ways she had never imagined. Just before serving the food, Mama BC reached across the table, placing her wrinkled hand gently over Kemi's. Her gaze was deep, almost prophetic. "My daughter," she said softly, "be careful." Kemi frowned. "Mama, what do you mean?" Mama BC sighed heavily. "You have a good heart, but not everyone who smiles at you is truly your friend. Envy hides behind bright faces." Kemi swallowed. She knew there was truth in Mama BC's words. But before she could reply, her phone buzzed. She glanced down. A message from an unknown number. "Meet me at the Grand Meridian Hotel tomorrow at 7 p.m. alone. I have something important to tell you." Kemi frowned. "Mama, someone just sent me a strange message." "What does it say?" Mama BC asked, her eyes narrowing. Kemi read it aloud. Mama BC's face darkened, but she masked it with a calm smile. "Be careful, my daughter. Not everything that glitters is gold." The next evening, Kemi arrived at the Grand Meridian Hotel, her heart pounding with uncertainty. She stepped into the glistening lobby, scanning the room nervously. In a corner, she spotted someone waiting. Anita. Kemi's stomach sank. She should have known. Anita smirked as Kemi approached. "Ah, so you came," she said smoothly, her tone dripping with false sweetness. Kemi folded her arms. "What do you want, Anita?" Leaning forward, Anita's eyes glinted like cold steel. "Listen carefully. If you know what's good for you, you'll stay away from Ayomide." Kemi blinked. "Stay away from Ayomide?" I don't even know him like that. Anita laughed coldly. Don't play dumb. The boss has already noticed you. It's only a matter of time before he starts pursuing you. And when that happens, she leaned closer, her voice a whisper. Ghouls like you don't stand a chance. Kemi shook her head in disbelief. This is ridiculous. Anita's face hardened. She slid a brown envelope across the table. Let's make it simple. Take this money, quit the company, walk away from Ayomide. Kemi's breath caught as she slowly opened the envelope. Bundles of crisp Naira notes stared back at her. Enough to pay her overdue rent, her younger brother's school fees, and her mother's hospital bills. For a moment, the temptation clawed at her. But then she looked up at Anita, at her smug, expectant smile. With steady hands, Kemi pushed the money back. No! Anita's eyes flared with rage. You're making a big mistake. Kemi stood, her voice calm but firm. No, Anita. You're the one making a mistake. She turned and walked away, her heart pounding. But Kemi didn't know someone else was watching. At the far corner of the restaurant, hidden behind dark glasses, Mama Bisi sat sipping her tea. She had seen everything, and now she knew Kemi had passed another test. That night as Kemi tried to sleep, her phone buzzed again. Another message from an unknown number. You just made the biggest mistake of your life. Her stomach twisted. She whispered a prayer and shut her eyes. But she knew this was only the beginning. The next morning, the office buzzed with unusual energy. As soon as Kemi walked in, she sensed it. People whispering, stifling laughter, glancing her way. She frowned. Something was wrong. Then she saw Anita standing in the middle of the office holding her phone high. Everyone, listen to this, Anita announced. She pressed play. A voice recording filled the room. Kemi's voice. Ayomide is already noticing me. And we both know it's only a matter of time before he starts chasing me. This is ridiculous. No, Anita, you are the one making a mistake. The audio had been sliced, twisted, manipulated. It sounded like Kemi was bragging about Ayomide. Laughter erupted across the office. So all that innocent face was fake, someone sneered. She's just like the rest of us, pretending to be humble, another added. Kemi's face burned with shame. Her fists clenched, but she stayed silent. Anita strutted closer, her eyes gleaming with triumph. She whispered, I warned you. You should have taken the money. At that moment, Ayomide stepped out of his office, having just wrapped up a meeting. He froze at the scene. The laughter, the awkward silence when he appeared, the stiffness in Kemi's posture. What is going on here? His voice was firm, cutting through the room. The laughter died instantly. People turned back to their desks. His sharp gaze landed on Anita. Explain. Anita laughed nervously. Oh, nothing, sir. We were just having a little fun with Kemi. Anita, Ayomide interrupted, his voice low and commanding. Meet me in my office. Now. Her smile faltered. Sir, it was just a joke. I said now. The room froze. Everyone pretended to work, but the tension was thick. Ayomide turned to Kemi, his voice softer. Are you all right? Kemi swallowed, forcing her voice steady. Yes, sir. But deep down she wasn't. She had been humiliated, her reputation smeared, and the war Anita had declared was far from over. That evening, Kemi sat at Mama Bisi's dining table, barely touching her food. My daughter, Mabisi said quietly, tell me the truth. Do you have feelings for Ayomide? Kemi nearly choked. Mama, what? No, I barely know him. Mama Bisi studied her face and sighed in relief. She was telling the truth. Still, she placed a gentle hand over Kemi. "They listen to me carefully," she said. "These girls will not stop. They are determined to destroy you. You must be strong." Kemi's eyes softened. "Mama, why do you care so much about me?" Mama Bisi hesitated. The truth pressed against her lips, but she wasn't ready to reveal it. Not yet. So she simply smiled. "Because, my daughter," Mama Bisi said softly, her wrinkled fingers tightening over Kemi's hand, "I see a light in you, something rare, something people like Anita will never understand." Kemi's eyes softened. A smile touched her lips, though she didn't fully grasp what Mama Bisi meant. To her, she was just an ordinary young woman trying to survive in Lagos. But Mama Bisi's gaze carried a weight she couldn't explain, as if she knew more than she was saying. Neither of them knew that while they shared that quiet dinner, a storm was already gathering, one that would shake Kemi's world in ways she couldn't imagine. The next morning at the office, the atmosphere felt different, tense, expectant. Anita strutted in as though she owned the place, her high heels striking the polished tiles with deliberate force. Her face was painted with victory. After all, she had humiliated Kemi the day before, and in her mind, that was only the beginning. She smirked, tossing her designer bag onto her desk. Everything was going according to plan. Kemi's reputation was crumbling, and soon, Ayomide would see that she, Anita, was the one he should notice. But then, she felt it. That unsettling sensation that someone's eyes were draining into her. Slowly, Anita turned her head and froze. By the cleaning closet, leaning casually on her mop, stood Mama Bisi. The old cleaner's eyes locked onto hers. Not the usual warm, humble eyes. No, this time they burned with something else. Something knowing. Something dangerous. Anita's throat went dry. "What are you staring at, old woman?" she snapped, forcing a laugh to mask the sudden chill crawling up her spine. Mama Bisi didn't answer. She only gave a slow, deliberate smile, one that seemed to strip Anita bare. Then, without a word, she turned, picked up her mop, and walked away. Anita swallowed hard. For the first time in a long while, she felt fear. Meanwhile, upstairs, Ayomide was distracted. He sat in his office, staring at the city skyline through the glass windows. But his mind kept circling back to one person, Kemi. She had been humiliated publicly, mocked cruelly, yet she hadn't lashed out. She had stood tall, silent, her dignity intact. That kind of strength wasn't common. Most people would have fought back or begged for sympathy, but not Kemi. And that intrigued him. He pressed the intercom. "Rose, call Kemi to my office." Downstairs, Kemi's stomach tightened when she heard the message. Again? Why did the boss keep calling her? She gathered her courage and went up. When she entered, Ayomide was standing by the window. He turned, his eyes softer than she expected. "Sit," he said. She obeyed, her palms damp with nerves. He studied her for a long moment before speaking. "Kemi, are you okay?" She blinked, caught off guard. "Yes, sir, I'm fine." Ayomide exhaled slowly, leaning back. "I heard what happened yesterday. I won't tolerate bullying in my company, not from anyone." Kemi lowered her gaze, her heart thudding. "Thank you, sir, but I don't want trouble. I just want to walk in peace." His eyes sharpened. He leaned forward, his voice lower. "Sometimes trouble finds you. Even when you don't look for it. Something in his tone made her breath hitch. This wasn't just about office politics. He was watching her closely. And he wasn't about to stop. That night, Anita tossed and turned in her bed. Sleep refused to come. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw Mama Bisi stare. That smile. It haunted her. At exactly 3 a.m., she jolted upright, drenched in sweat. Her phone buzzed. A new message. With trembling hands, she picked it up. You have touched the wrong person. Her heart nearly stopped. She looked around her dark room, shadows stretching across the walls. The silence was too heavy, too alive. She wasn't safe. She knew it. Morning came too quickly. Kemi, exhausted but determined, woke up early. She had barely tied her scarf when a sharp knock rattled her door. Confused, she hurried to open it. 2 police officers stood on her doorstep. Her chest tightened. Yes? She whispered. Are you Kemi Alade? One asked sternly. She nodded, fear prickling her skin. You are under arrest for theft and fraud. The words slapped into her like a hammer. What? No, there must be a mistake. Kemi's voice cracked as the handcuffs dug into her wrist. I didn't do anything. Please, I didn't. She whispered, but the officers didn't even flinch. They dragged her toward the waiting van, indifferent to her tears. Her world shattered in that moment. Neighbors peeked from behind their curtains, whispering and pointing. To them, she was guilty already. By the time they reached the station, Kemu felt as if her very soul had been ripped from her body. They shoved her into a cold, damp cell. The stench of fear and despair hung in the air. She sat on the hard bench, trembling, her mind spinning. How? How did this happen? She had never stolen a kobo in her life. Hours passed. The iron bars felt like they were closing in on her, when finally, a guard appeared. Your bail's been posted, he said flatly. Her head jerked up, eyes wide. Who paid? The guard shrugged. She's waiting outside. Confused and terrified, Kemi followed him into the waiting room. The moment she stepped out, her breath caught. Mama Bisi. The old cleaner stood there, her wrapper tied firmly, her face a mixture of sorrow and quiet strength. Mama? Kemi's lips trembled as fresh tears spilled down her cheeks. I swear, I didn't do it. I didn't take any money. Mama Bisi stepped forward, her eyes soft. She reached out and brushed a tear from Kemi's cheek with the gentleness of a mother. I know, my daughter, she said quietly. I know. At those words, Kemi broke, collapsing into her arms. She wept like a child, while Mama Bisi held her, rocking her softly. But as she cried, she had no idea that this was only the beginning of something far bigger than she could see. Across town, Ayomide was at his desk when his phone buzzed with the news alert. His eyes scanned the headline. Young staff member Kemi Alade arrested for fraud. Dropped. No, he muttered, shaking his head. That's impossible. He grabbed his keys and stormed out of the office. He didn't care about protocol, didn't care about appearances. He needed to see her, now. Meanwhile, in a luxury hotel suite, Anita reclined in a silk robe sipping champagne. Linda sat beside her, scrolling through her phone. Ayo left the office in a rush, Linda reported, glancing at her screen. People are saying he's gone to see Kemi. Anita smirked, swirling her drink. Let him. By the time I'm done, Kemi won't even have a name left to protect. Linda frowned, biting her lip. Anita, framing someone like this, it's dangerous. What if the truth comes out? Anita's eyes flashed with cold fire. I warned her. She should have taken the money when she had the chance. Now she'll learn what happens when you cross me. Linda swallowed hard. Something in Anita's tone chilled her to the bone. She had always admired Anita's boldness, but this was different. This was dark. Back at her small home, Mama BC sat with Kemi, who looked pale and broken. Why is this happening to me? Kemi whispered, her voice hoarse. What did I do wrong, Mama? Why me? Mama BC's heart ached. She wanted to tell her everything, that she wasn't just the cleaner everyone thought she was, that she was in fact the real owner of the company, and that Ayomide was her son, that all of this had been a test. But the time wasn't right. Not yet. Instead, she held Kemi's trembling hands. Sometimes, when life tests you, my daughter, it is because something greater is coming. Kemi looked up at her, tears glistening in her eyes. But what if I fail? Mama BC smiled softly. Then you rise and try again. That is how gold is refined. Before Kemi could answer, a knock echoed at the door. Mama BC's body tensed. Kemi frowned, wiping her face, and went to open it. Her breath caught. Ayomide stood there. His suit was slightly disheveled, his eyes burning with worry. For a moment, the world went still. Then he stepped inside. I need the truth, Kemi, he said quietly. Kemi's lips trembled. I didn't steal anything. He studied her carefully. There was no hesitation in her voice, no guilt in her eyes. But the evidence, bank statements, reports, everything pointed at her. It didn't make sense. Kemi, he pressed his tone further. If you're lying to me, I need to know now. Tears streamed down her cheeks. I swear on my life, Ayo, I don't know how that money got into my account. Someone set me up. Please, you have to believe me. Her pain cut through him like a blade. For a long moment, he said nothing. Then he turned toward the door. I'll find the truth, he said lowly. And if you're innocent, I'll make sure the person who did this pays. Then he was gone, leaving Kemi standing in the room, her heart racing, her faith hanging by a thread. That night, Anita celebrated her victory at a rooftop bar, her laughter echoing against the night sky. She raised her glass, ready to toast herself, when her phone buzzed. Unknown number. Frowning, she picked it up. Hello? For a moment, there was only silence. Then a deep, raspy voice whispered, You have made a terrible mistake. Anita froze. Her chest tightened. Who is this? She demanded. But the only reply was slow, steady breathing before the line went dead. Her hand shook as she lowered the phone. For the first time since her scheme began, Anita felt something new. Fear. The next morning, Ayomide sat in his office, restless. His gut told him something was wrong. Kemi didn't look like a thief. She hadn't run. She hadn't denied her situation with excuses. She had only begged to be believed. He rubbed his temples and picked up the phone. Security, I want all the CCTV footage from last week. Every corner. Every office. There was a long pause before the officer answered. Sir, there's a problem. Ayomide stiffened. What problem? All the footage from that week. It's gone. Wiped clean. His blood ran cold. Gone? Someone had deliberately erased the evidence. And suddenly, everything clicked. Kemi hadn't lied. She was framed. And Ayomide had nearly destroyed the only woman in the company who still had her dignity intact. But what he didn't know was that the game had only just begun. And Anita was already planning her next move.